Welcome to the Green Solvents Podcast, brought to you by TBF Environmental Technologies, home of solvents for a green earth. Now, here's your host.
Well, yes, this is your host, Erik Reynolds, and I'm back again with Dave Pasin, president of TBF Environmental. And today we're talking with Dave about VOC exempt solvents. And we'll be discussing what they are, why they're important, regulations, and how they benefit the environment. Now, right before Dave joins us, just as a reminder that if you have questions or require assistance, you can reach Dave at 604-580-1575. Again, that's 604-580-1575. Well, Dave, it's great to be talking with you again today.
Good afternoon, Erik. Thank you for having me.
Well, Dave, we're talking about VOC exempt solvents, and why don't you just go ahead and answer the big question, which is, what are VOC exempt solvents?
Well, it's actually a rather complicated question, but basically, a VOC exempt solvent is a volatile organic compound solvent. So they're solvents that are deemed by the Environmental Protection Agency or the Air Quality Management District in California or the National Pollution Release Index, NPRI, in Canada, as having the least amount of, or creating the least amount of pollution or harm to the environment. So they'll have no hazardous air pollutants. They'll have, they will contain no ozone depleters or creators. They're very important in ensuring that lessening the amount of smog created by industrial products, whether it be inks or coatings, adhesives, consumer products, that kind of thing. They are of critical importance in improving the environment for the worker and end user.
Well, Dave, now that we know what are VOC exempt solvents, how do solvents become exempt?
Solvents, it's a long, laborious process, but generally speaking, there's a variety of different criteria that are looked at to making a solvent exempt. One is, do they contribute to ozone creation? Do they contribute to the creation of smog? Do they have container or help create hazardous air pollutants like aldehydes and those kind of toxic materials? So there's a variety of different things in their interaction with the variety of different products. So what happens is you've got to look at a solvent. You have to look at what's called the measurement of incremental reactivity, which is the ability of the solvent to create smog. You have to look at toxicity levels. You have to look at, does it contain a variety of components that are harmful to human health and health of the planet?
Now, this may be a question that almost seems silly to ask, but I'm going to go ahead and ask for the benefit of our listeners and myself. Why are VOC exempt solvents important?
Well, these days, everybody's looking at being green and wanting to help the environment, no matter what side of the issue you come down on. We can't continue to pollute our planet and survive as a people. So it's critical that we come up with better products that are less harmful to the environment, less polluting to the air, less contaminating to the soil, and overall less contaminating or harmful to the individual. So what it amounts to is you have to develop products that are basically more beneficial, not only for the environment, for the people who live in that environment. So whether it be somebody who's allergic or very sensitive to air pollution, and air pollution leads to hundreds of deaths a year throughout North America, or whether it be somebody who's just critically, or sensitive to odor, or somebody who's allergic to the touch of different types of, chemicals. It's a variety of different things. So it's for the overall benefit of the health of the planet and the individual. So those are critical, and they're critical in everyday life. And what people don't realize is that when they walk into a room or wherever they go, there's solvents involved in almost everything they do, whether it's in their automobile, whether it's in their home, whether it's in their cooking, and I mean, yes, in their food. Solvents are used extensively in food products. So, no matter where you go in your life, you can't get away from it. So if we can create better products that are safer for the environment and safer for people, we're going to create a better world for everybody.
Now, Dave, we've had a handful of conversations now, and I've got a question I've been meaning to ask for a while. Talking about exemptions and restrictions, why are some jurisdictions so much more restrictive than others?
You have jurisdictions. It's a good question, actually, and one of the reasons is some areas are far more proactive than others. In other words, they're much more restrictive because they have a problem and they need to deal with it, such as the Los Angeles, Southern California District, Central California, which is the California Air Resources Board, East Texas, Massachusetts. Those are places that are being proactive because they recognize that there's an environmental problem and they need to deal with it. So they want to make sure that that companies and industry try and lessen their effect on the environment. And that's a benefit to everybody because it involves lost productivity through injury or time off through health-related issues. So there's a variety of different things related to it. And the more proactive a jurisdiction is, what they've actually shown is that people are more receptive to the products that are created out of those environments. And then, of course, other jurisdictions then follow because nobody wants to be left behind.
Now Dave, how do regulations, though, vary across, say, different provinces, states, and countries?
Well, it's interesting because California has some of the toughest jurisdictional regulations in North America. And they're very tight in how many emissions a product can emit, if you will. So they ensure, like, for example, some paints and coatings in California have to emit less than 50 grams per liter of VOCs into the atmosphere, volatile organic compounds into the atmosphere. So that can contribute to everything from global warming to ozone creation to smog. So what they're trying to do is lessen that and, of course, lessen the effects on the environment. And what's interesting is that, generally speaking, in the United States, it's governed by county and by state. And then, of course, there's an overriding organization called the Environmental Protection Agency, which, of course, designates certain products as VOC exempt. In Canada, we have what's called the NPRI, or National Pollution Release Index, and it's a different type of system. While we have products that are exempt, we also have to report the amount of products that are used in the workplace. So if you have product X, you can use, say, up to 5,000 gallons a year, 5,000 pounds a year, 5,000 kilos a year, and then you have to report how much you use. That's also dependent on your man hours, how many man hours you have involved in your factory per year. One of the differences is that it's looked at in Canada and in some progressive jurisdictions in the United States. They have programs or actually legislation that they have to come up with programs to decrease the amount of toxins used in the workplace. So in Ontario, you have Bill 167, which is the Toxic Reduction Act. You have a similar act in Massachusetts, some in California, Texas. There are places throughout the United States and Canada that are very progressive in trying to reduce the amount of toxins in the workplace and improve the health and safety of their employees as well.
Now, Dave, there's a difference to me between things that just do less damage and things that actually benefit the environment. So what about VOC exempt solvents? Why do they benefit the environment?
Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons, but primarily is that they don't contribute to the creation of smog, and they don't contribute or create increased air pollution, which or for example, they don't create to ozone depletion, or they don't create what's called heavy smog, if you will, for lack of a better term. What it does is it helps create a blanket. In other words, an inversion where the smog sits down just like a cloud over the area. So it won't contribute, or it lessens the contribution to those kinds of environmental creations or factors. So you're going to improve the health of the community by lessening the amount of emissions into the atmosphere. That's the bottom line.
Now, before we go today, Dave, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, there's a couple things you need to be aware of. That's green is everything these days, but not everything is green. So you have to read the label. You have to be conscious of what companies are doing. And progressive companies recognize that they can't sell one product in one area and one product in another. They need to sell products that benefit the entire country. So they're trying to create one line of product, if you will, that will meet the regulations in the toughest area, which of course improves the health of everybody, whether it be the environment or the individual. Those are the kind of things that need to be cognizant of. Price, I recognize, is important, but people need to recognize that sometimes you have to pay more. You'll get a better product. It'll be better for you. So those are the kind of things we need to keep in mind as consumers, and also that we need to demand of companies when we purchase or look at buying their products. So those are the kind of things that I would suggest people keep in mind. Just because something is cheap doesn't mean it's good or it'll work for you. Sometimes you have to spend a little bit more, compare, and recognize what's best for you. And I think that's important for your overall health and the health of the community and the health of the environment.
Well, Dave, it's been a great conversation today, and I've enjoyed talking with you about the VOC exempt solvents. And, for me, it's great to know that there are safe and effective alternatives available. Now, for our listeners, if you know someone who would benefit from what we talked about today, go ahead and share this podcast with them. I'm sure they'll thank you for it. Now, for our listeners, again, you can visit Dave at www.tbfenvironmental.com. Again, that's www.tbfenvironmental.com. Or you can always reach Dave by telephone at 604-580-1575. Again, that's 604-580-1575. Well, Dave, as always, for myself, and again for the listeners, thanks so much for the call today.
No worries, Eric. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. At TBF Environmental Technologies, we manufacture solvents for a green earth. Contact TBF Environmental Technologies today, toll free at 877-658-30.